There we go. Awesome. Welcome everybody to another weekly call for ResearchHub. So wanted to start. We have a few topics today, but one of the first ones, and good thing honestly, Kobe is here, so he can hopefully hear some of the feedback for it. Is going to be just kind of what are some of like the initial thoughts on the peer review feature. So this was like kind of a V1 feature that got pushed out last week, and just kind of want to hear what some people's thoughts on it are and like what maybe they would like to add on to that, and what their experience has been if they did do a peer review.
So I think it looks great. I tried it today because I made a peer review today. Looks great. I really like the bottom with all the the dots. So right now it looks like basically like a comment with a score. I like this like free format submission. Just wondering like if in the future we are thinking about like structuring it a little bit more, just having like checklists for specific things that we want to check to actually give an objective score more than a subjective one. But for now, it looks great. Looks really cool.
Yeah, so totally. We've definitely been thinking a lot about that. I know Kobe has some like checklists in mind. Sort of the way we were thinking about it initially was to get something freeform out there, as you said, and see how people use it. And then like take that feedback from the first month and potentially bake in like specific categories. I know Nathan, you had suggested a while back, like the Cochrane, I forget the exact term, I've looked it up a bunch of times, but like they're smarter people than us who have thought of like what categories should go into a peer review, like when evaluating an article. So yeah, we like just to see like how people use it at first, and then we'll probably bake in scores. And then even maybe there might be like an expert score versus like a casual crowdsource score, and there may be different kind of categories for each too. So what do you all think? Like, do you think it's important to have like specific categories for more like objective style reviews? Yes, Nathan.
Yeah, sorry, I haven't had the chance. Obviously, I wasn't quite on the site at the start of this week, but I haven't had the chance to complete a fully formed peer review yet. But it'd be interesting. Maybe I could try using some of the questionnaire, the checklists myself, posting it in that format in the free form comment, seeing how people respond to it. Maybe experiment with some of the checklists I can find and see how that goes down in terms of facilitating engagement and how the score's used, and then we can go from there. I don't know what you think about that, Patrick.
Sounds like an awesome idea. Yeah, it would be great. Like if you use just the checklist in your own review and then just, see how good that looks. The other thing I think too is like questions that go into a peer review like this, like it's a challenging thing to standardize it and have it apply to like every field of science. So I imagine this is also going to be something that's sort of like our reward algorithm where there's a lot of iterations. And we'll probably try something standard and like, continually be seeking feedback, trying to achieve like a better standard over time.
We could use bounties to help there.
Bounties for like peer reviews themselves, or like
structures, like people who have expertise in the different academic fields, maybe coming up with different ways to review specific papers, and then perhaps other people in that field can comment on that and go from there.
Well, that's actually an interesting idea. So like hub specific like checklists in peer reviews, so that way you don't have to have something universal for every field.
Yeah, I don't know, just thought of it, but
I think eventually we'll kind of go into like a hub specific kind of frame of mind where maybe different hubs have different ways of rewarding content, like different types of peer review, different editor cultures. Like letting each hub or field have their own culture, I think, is a cool thing.
I can see why it's too early for that. So
yeah.
Would it help if I also try to do something similar to what Nathan want to do? Like basically, how I structure my peer review was I went over the introduction and be like, okay, is there a sort of like a context? Is the context clear? what is the novelty of this paper? It is that, concept clear. Then materials and methods, are the materials and methods explained in a way that are understandable? Did the authors miss some, important steps that makes it difficult for me to reproduce, what I did? On the results, were they fair, like in the way they presented it, in a way that, they kind of like try to obscure something? Did they go over some, reproducibility? How many times did they try what they did? Did they test it in different conditions and so on? And for the conclusion, it's just I just use it in a, sort of like a paragraph to overall give a comment on the paper. So I think I could do that with most of the engineering papers because they're structured in this way. And actually, most of them, they also have some specific like categories for like for example, sensors. They have, sensitivity, selectivity, reproducibility, and so on. So you can kind of like structure even a table as they do in reviews. So that could be something that I could, start thinking about, at least in my field.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that sounds like a great overall structure. And it seems like, Nathan, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like pretty similar to when I looked up like the Cochrane stuff. So it seems like people are kind of on the same page. Yeah, I think it might make sense, like at the end of this month, like to just have a call where we can maybe collect a bunch of different checklists and work together to merge them or pick one that we want to go with initially. So that way we can just have everybody on the same page and like, have just a bunch of different people thinking about what exact categories are going to go into this like, eventual overall peer review score.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to have a call like that and go over these things, and that gives us time as well to maybe experiment with some of them as free text comments as well, see how people respond.
It's a great idea to do them just like go ahead right now in the free text. That's a great thought. I like that a lot. Just writing that down. So what do you guys think of like the UI for the score? Do you like how it's kind of positioned? Let me I can share my screen just to help show it off. So we've got this up here. And then also this in the comment section. Do you guys like this kind of like bar paradigm for like the peer review score and the colors?
Yeah.
Some of this, I guess, like delineate between comments and peer review. Obviously, there's a little like on it. I was wondering if peer review something eventually. There's 30 to splitting up tabs. Like I wanted to just view tab. I want to just look at peer review. Look at the peer review.
Can you guys hear Jeff? It was kind of cracking up.
No, I couldn't hear him.
No, I can't hear you, Jeff. It's so, choppy.
Sounded insightful though.
Yeah, it sounded like you had a lot to say.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I can make one comment in the meantime, which is that I don't know at the moment a peer review score out of 10. I don't know quite how to interpret that, because I think you can go at it from two ways. Is it looking at the validity of the methods? Is it looking at how interesting the study is? These are all aspects of peer review that can be performed, when a editor looks at a submission to a journal, right? To be honest, most of the time they look at the interestingness out of 10 first before they even send it to peer reviewers. I think even in like a basic free text version, we need to split it into some basic categories. I don't know what other people think about that.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with you. And like one thing that we think about too, like you're saying, like a 10 out of 10, there's definitely more information that goes into a typical peer review. Do you think like ideally if we had, subcategories or whatever, how do you think that should be displayed? Like, could it be a 10 out of 10 where then you click into it and it tells you like the breakdown, or like, how would you like to see that on the page?
I like the score. I think So let's just take it one more step of complexity from here. Let's say we had 2 bars, one for how interesting is this paper or research impact or something like that. And the second bar is, robustness or, I'm just coming up with words off the top of my head, but you see what I mean? Some critique of the methods. And then you have 2 scores out of 10. That would already be, I think, far more useful than this. But then I really like your idea of then you could then click on each of those and see, okay, what were the peer reviewers saying about this? Almost like a kind of, then you click on the Amazon reviews and you see, okay, what has each reviewer said about each aspect and how they scored it, how they informed the score that they've given.
Interesting. Malik?
Yeah, I like that idea of giving 2 scores, but I also wanted to like try to understand, and then earlier to what Jeffrey's comment was, or was it Ricardo, that right now the peer review function that we have, it looks almost like a comment, and because these are already published articles, so I was trying to understand we should have a clear description where it says, oh, this is pre-publication peer review or this is post-publication, and what are the objectives for each one, because one of the main aims for peer review that we do is, okay, is this study valid enough that should it be published in this journal or not, and if there are errors in the study, then need to point out and let the authors know that, hey, this is what's wrong. So I was just wondering, right now, the peer reviews that I saw were all of published articles, so we may have a bar saying, oh, this is post-publication or a pre-publication, and then somehow, I don't know, have an automatic email or something where the comments go to the authors that, hey, your paper has been blah 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 peer reviewed by so and so, and you get that. A notification.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because there is pretty different context in a post-publication peer review versus a pre-publication, and we're definitely more in the overlay journal kind of perspective at the moment. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and I think we probably should have something like that. The reason why we chose to just say peer review is it's very simple, and kind of the pre-publication and post-publication thing, that's a little bit of an academic niche where you gotta be really in the industry to know what those things mean. And so peer review is not accurate for sure, because it's not the traditional peer review, but it's a concept that even people very outside of academia, they can get a hold of what's going on here. But I think you're right, where maybe we can have a little hover state or something that says hey, these papers were not originally published in ResearchHub. This is a post-publication peer review. These have already been peer reviewed by the journal, in pre-publication fashion, or just to help clarify for the actual academics who are hey, this is clearly not peer review. So yeah, it's a great point, Malik. And then one question I have before I move on to everybody else's hands for a second is does anyone not want subcategories? Does pretty much everyone feel there needs to be some kind of breakdown of this score, or does anybody want to leave it free form?
I mean, I like it. I think it should be broken down, but if you still want to keep it like this, a way could be justifying the score. I could readily justify why I gave 10 out of 10. Because for example, I know other papers that were made in a similar field, and that was probably the best that I read in the last couple of years. So I could tell you exactly why I gave that. So if you want to break it down, at least give a justification of your score. Could be a way.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear this, because Kobe was definitely rooting for it. He was even saying this morning during our in-sync that we should be thinking about it. So yeah, very interesting. Thank you, guys. I guess Nick?
So I just also wanted to voice some support for the idea of multiple categories. It could be interesting if there was, because when a reviewer gets a paper, there's all these variables that collapse into that binary, yes or no decision on the paper. So there could be like an aggregate score overall, and then that shows broken down. And then it could be cool because you could have each person, they could expand on it in their comments and everything, but they could give a brief bit in there to say, oh, they scored the impact factor of the data low. And then they could put a 1-sentence snippet. So then you could get that quick high level view of, okay, 10 people looked at it. Instead of reading through 10 lengthy detailed comments, you could just get the gist of each of those comments and then how that rating kind of came into it. And I think then it would help people reading it, but it would also help us understand how people perceive papers too, because we'd get a window into what their thinking was behind the number that they gave.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah,
Even
me too.
like it does, somebody said earlier, like the Amazon reviews, where if we're in the methodology section, everybody's given 8s and 9s, and then like 2 people give 2s. You want to be like, oh, what's going on here? Like, is this a legit perspective? Do they have a good reason, or are they just trying to flame a paper? Like, yeah, it's a good point. That definitely, it's a lot more interesting even thinking about it rather than having to dig through a big like block of peer review. Satvik?
Yeah, my point is kind of in line with what Nick has just said. So I was thinking that before anyone could sort of click publish on a peer review, we could give them a pop-up that hey, we are just testing out this feature. We just launched it out. So would you be willing to give us a short breakdown of what led you to this score? And then the way Ricardo just told us what was his breakdown, everybody could sort of be prompted to give that breakdown, and then about a month from now, in the call that you suggested, we could have a look at those sort of breakdowns and see what was a recurring theme that maybe we could implement into the system itself. And also a UI point. I was not sure why the bar for peer reviews was different from the bar for the hypothesis feature, which is green and sort of thin. Right? So yeah, those are the 2 points I have.
That's a great point, to stay consistent between hypothesis and the peer review, or at least like use similar styles. That's very observant. Thanks. Yeah, and I actually like the idea too of like maybe like asking people to break it down for us and just seeing where they take it. Yeah, we have like a pretty cool community, so it would be like you would get a lot of information on like how different people consume papers. It's a good idea. We'll definitely think about that. I guess, Kobe, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I think I have a couple of questions. So the first one of the challenges I see is that most papers are just going to have a single review. So you're just going to end up. So this breakdown we speak of like hovering and seeing like different stats are. They might happen for some papers, but it's going to be very seldomly the case. So with that being said, I guess does anyone have any idea of how to get more papers reviewed? And 2, let's say we did have this breakdown, right? So you can like rate in different categories. Does it make sense to always provide like in addition to your rating, like some text information about like why you rated that way, or like go with Amazon style where it's like, oh, you just you can rate 5 out of 5 and that's about it. I kind of have an idea of where things should be, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
So, Kobe, I don't understand why you don't think a lot of papers will have peer reviewers.
It's something like half of papers are even read, so it's already half of papers won't get any peer reviews just because they've never been read or something. So I think
same thing with comments. Like most of our papers, like a lot of them don't have comments, so it's kind of like, I guess, a similar problem.
Ricardo?
Yeah, so if that could help, I could like already start with my peer review and break down the the score to actually give out like in very simple terms explain why I gave that score, if that could help to for other people to do the same.
Yeah, I think Ricardo, that like the breakdown of the score is honestly for me one of the most important things right now to help us like shape the UI, etc. Because I was reading the Cochrane like review and their consumer reviews and all the different types of reviews that they offer, and they rate in many different ways. So I think, and I'm not a scientist, so it'll be really helpful to get like the feedback of an actual like academic / scientist to help us with this the different categories and breakdowns.
Yeah, sure.
I think what makes a lot of sense is, and I know this because I just got a grant back, and I think the way that the grant writers do it and the grant reviewers is like super ideal because they give you an overall score. So when you go on your like ERA Commons account, you see, hey, I scored 24 and I was in X percentile. But so there's this overall score, but that score is created by a series of like subcategories under there. And then those subcategories also have descriptions from the reviewer on why they were given that way. It's really beneficial to the author of the paper if we do it for our case, because then they can look and see, hey, I submitted this preprint, for example, it got peer reviewed here. I know exactly the points that are a point of contention. And then when they say maybe they want to go publish it in a journal after this, then they know exactly where the points of contention are that they can improve on. And it also helps like readers because then they can see visually, hey, there's this open peer review and these are the points that are often points of contention in the 9 papers I've read. Let me make sure to address these issues once I publish.
Mm-hmm.
I've just got a couple of quick. Yeah, I've got a couple of quick thoughts on the single score method of giving an overall judgment on the peer review. I think for Jeffrey, what you were saying about that one score that you got that was really useful from the grant reviewers, I think a really key aspect of that is that when you submit grants to a single grant authority, you are assuming that all grants are being assessed on similar criteria by them, and therefore the score that you're getting is comparative to any other submission that was given to them. I think the difference on ResearchHub is that you're getting all these different peer reviewers all using seemingly completely different criteria for different subject areas. So my 10 out of 10 might be, this is the most interesting paper I've ever read. Meanwhile, someone else's 1 out of 10 might be, this is the worst conducted study I've seen. Do you see what I mean? So I think if we can standardize the score, and then the single score would be more helpful if everyone was using similar checklists and people were then working through those checklists. But otherwise, if we're going through an Amazon review approach for research, I think it's more useful to just read what people are saying. On Amazon, I don't really look at the star rating. I look at what they said and use the star rating as a sort of just indication of what kind of a review this is going to be. Just going back to some of the points, Maulik, I think, made a really great point about how, like, in normal reviews, they make a decision on whether something should be published or not in their journal. I quite like that. I think it's kind of controversial, but I like the idea that if someone posted, the MMR vaccine paper from 1998 showing vaccine causes autism, that you could have a review saying that I don't think this should be uploaded. Like, and if there was enough people who posted that, we could flag it as like, okay, this needs to be looked at because we've had reviewers saying that this is just complete nonsense. And then the third thing I was going to say very quickly is it would be nice to have some facility to create a dialogue between authors and the reviewers, because I think this is a really common point of contention where a lot of the time when an author submits a paper, they are by definition the experts in their paper. They understand the methods way better than the reviewers do most of the time, and sometimes the comments they get back they feel are kind of unfair because the reviewers haven't really understood what was going into the paper. It would be great if you could have that dialogue and the reviewers had the capability to modify their review based on the dialogue they've had with the author.
Yeah, so this is kind of interesting, just to jump in for a second, because it feels like we're almost pushing towards pre-publication peer review here. It's like we got this feature launch that's kind of like overlay journal style, but like the real value here is like helping authors improve in a standardized way. And so I had a conversation with somebody earlier today who like tried to make a business where the idea was they would provide consulting to authors like before they actually submitted to journals to basically be like, hey, here's the weak points, like exactly what you were describing, Jeff. So maybe there's a world where like ResearchHub can actually have a business model where people who share preprints, you know, they put up a bounty for peer review on their like preprint on ResearchHub, and then there's like actionable feedback that helps to like basically, yeah, find out where the holes in the paper are, and then authors can improve it, actually submit it to like a real journal. Is that like a realistic world whatsoever, do you guys think?
Yeah. If we can only direct some of the people that publish on archive on ResearchHub, like that would be pretty big. Because I'm pretty sure like 90% that like a lot of people would use our service, because we have a large like user base, and people skilled in a specific field. So that would be a great, especially if, as Jeff said, you have like this weakness, like for example in the methodology, or like this weakness, like this is not too novel, like improve on this one. That would be actually like pretty interesting.
What is how is a similar thing done now?
So I know like some preprint servers actually offer it as a service. Like they'll like if you're ESL or like you need help like working on your paper, they'll like give you editorial services. I think you have to pay like $300 or something like that, like 300, 500, and they just have an editor go through it and make it sound nice. So I think authors are paying money right now, to get like some like editorial help with their content before they actually submit it to like big journals. Nick?
So first, I wanted to voice some support for what Nathan said. I think that allowing users to kind of be a fly on the wall for that high level conversation between the author and the reviewer would be really great, just to get a window into what things are discussed. And I was thinking about something too. I don't know if you guys have heard of Cunningham's Law, but it's talking about the best way to get an answer online is to pose a question and then answer it with the incorrect answer, and then someone would chime in. So I was just thinking, as far as people justifying their scores, if they're able to justify it in like a one sentence thing, then it would lower the activation energy for somebody else to come in. Because if they see a really low score on one, they're like, oh, this data was not reproducible. That might be more interesting to them in looking at it, and kind of getting a quick blurb to really draw their attention in might make it easier than, they're definitely having the higher detail if they want it, but having that lower amount of quick detail to kind of ease that transition in versus, them just clicking next after that, I think would be good.
Like kind of like a conclusion, Nick, almost like you did all your thing, you reviewed, and then you provide like a one sentence summary.
Yeah, just something where, if we end up going the direction of having multiple score options, just a little bit of a justification behind it, I think might be easier for somebody who just happened upon that page. If they had just 1 minute, they could really see what's going on and then be like, they gave this a 2 out of 10. I want to see what's going on. And that would kind of pull them in, and that might help get us around the what you were talking about, Kobe, where we're worried that there might just be one review posted and then no one else would do a follow-up because that review seems so comprehensive. It's almost intimidating to try to do that, which has already been done.
Mm-hmm.
So just out of curiosity, sorry, Kobe.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Have you all seen F1000 before? This is like a preprint server that does peer review just in the open, and they have a cool UI. So in theory, like they have this like kind of like front page where you can browse through articles. Some are awaiting peer review, some have been peer reviewed. So if you click in, they have this right panel that basically has like the whole open peer review of the paper. So this would be like the first version of the paper that you can download. I think you might have to sign in or something, or I don't have the cookies. But then like you can see the first like peer reviewers, like peer review report. And like they have a little bit of a checklist, and then you can also respond to it. So yeah, they have like a nice little UI where it like has like pretty much what we're talking about a little bit. Like people actually do respond, thank you, thanks for sharing this, minor changes, whatever. But yeah, so we could do something similar to that. I think like pretty easily for preprints that are shared on ResearchHub.
Yeah, that UI looks awesome. I completely agree.
Cool.
On a side note, how do you feel about someone giving a 2 out of 10 of a review and having their name there? It's something that maybe we're not thinking about because but that could be I don't want to say a problem, but someone might be a little bit just think about it before actually giving a bad score. This is maybe something that we want to just like think about once we iterate with the peer review feature.
Yeah, so this is like a big deal because do you know PubPeer? Have you ever used PubPeer before? They're like online reviews of papers. The founder of PubPeer had to stay anonymous for like 5 years. He wouldn't even acknowledge that he made the website because he was scared of the like professional implications. He's just making the website. And so they let you be anonymous. And I think it's a pretty important thing. So we could do something. We also have to make sure that like it's a productive environment and stuff, and not just anybody's coming in and just flaming papers, for no reason, because that does happen on PubPeer. Sometimes it's like not the, most professional interactions. And so I think we could do something where like, if you have X rep or you hold X coins, like then you get the ability to, peer review anonymously, but maybe you don't earn any tokens from that anonymous peer review or something. Like it's just purely for like the health of the community, not making money. There's ways we could do it, but I think we definitely need to do something like that, or else people won't share like true opinions. Molly?
Yeah, just a couple comments. I was just wondering, like, I haven't had any peer reviews in my hub, but are we having any gatekeeping by the editor of the hub for the review done at this stage? Like, if somebody just posted a review, would that go through the editor first before it goes live?
So I think it's just like a comment right now, and then editors are able to delete like spammy comments. So if you see a peer review that you think is like not scientific or like, yeah, it doesn't belong in your hub, I think you're able to remove it. But that's the only kind of moderation we have currently.
Because I feel like, at some stage when we become really big and there will be like bigger professionals here, it would be nice if the editor can like, approve or not approve for various reasons, just because, as you said in PubPeer, if somebody is just doing like, random, comments about a paper for one reason or another, then that cannot be caught. And the other thing I wanted to mention was come back. I think we have discussed this before, but if we are going for pre-publication, one service that a lot of institutions and scientists would really find helpful is just the language part of the paper for people working in non-English countries and statistics. This is not the help that's not available to scientists who are not at big institutions, and it's a lot of time that they spend trying to do that themselves. And if we have somebody to just help with that part of the paper, then I think we'll be in business like really quick.
So it's interesting you say that because I was about to send this product to Kobe that I stumbled across today, but then I figured it wasn't worth it. But it's like a ML tool that like automatically helps to like change authors' phrasing of things to be more professional and more likely to be accepted in journals. So it like has this, it's read every paper ever accepted, and it makes like phrasing suggestions and stuff. And so, yeah, I think there's stuff that we can do to help like basically that pre-submission kind of editorial perspective. Nathan?
I know another thing that traditional societies and journals charge for, and they can charge, quite significantly for this. I think it's hundreds of dollars. Is formatting help for submission to some journals, and then also like the graphics design element of things, where I guess from we don't appreciate it, but actually in certain places they might not have access to the software that would allow for, you know, creating high quality images from the data that they want to present. And so we could also offer that as well. And then just a thought about, you know, how this has the propensity to become toxic. I do agree with that. I mean, there's some examples of this. For example, on Twitter, oftentimes people do sometimes post people's research and then post it in quite a negative light, and that can very quickly become a sort of brigading type event where people then come on top of it, claiming that, you know, oh, this research is wrong. But oftentimes that's fine, except oftentimes they're completely wrong and they've misunderstood the paper, and they've misunderstood oftentimes the statistics or something like that. They've come to the wrong conclusion, then everyone's diving in on their opinions on the conclusion. That's why I think it's really important that the authors have a voice when they get a negative peer review, and that actually, you know, if we are to sway one way or the other, we give the authors the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes we might give them too much benefit of the doubt, but I feel like that's a better way of doing things than going the other way, because that's when we get this negative reaction to people's research being posted, you know, without their consent on the site.
We could probably do something where, like, if the author responds to a peer review, it's automatically at the top or something like that. So that way, like, it gives the visibility.
And I think we discussed it briefly, but I think we should probably reach out to authors who get their papers peer reviewed, just to let them know, hey, your paper has been peer reviewed. Do you want to chime in? And, you know, I think that they might.
Sapik? Sapik, do you have your hand up? No, but he's not.
Yeah, I was muted. If anybody else has anything to add to this, because I wanted to take it back to a point that Patrick had brought up earlier, which was about differentiating expert and normal peer reviews. So I could maybe chime in later on if we could continue this discussion.
That sounds good to me. I think Jeff actually messaged something here too, so it's good timing.
All right. So what I had to say was that we should not differentiate between the way we present expert and non-expert reviews, because I think that would be antithetical to DSI, basically, right? Because then again, we are differentiating people based on academics, right? And one thing that we could go ahead with to sort of decrease the amount of noise that this lack of differentiation would generate is when people are going to write down a peer review, we could ask them before they start writing if they have any experience writing peer review, like sort of as a pop-up. And if they don't, we could sort of have a very short tutorial in which we could provide stuff like our expert scientists use this process or use this methodology to write out peer reviews that are valuable to the authors, right? And then this is what you should aim to provide with your peer reviews, something like that, that could sort of hold their hand through their first few peer reviews. But differentiation, I don't think differentiation should come in.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from, and like I guess I always like trusting experts, you know, take it out of my hands kind of, but like it's a decent point that you make, and like at the end of the day, the argument should probably be able to stand alone regardless of who says it or who says it. I guess like in your mind here, Sapik, with these like you know, like just everyone peer reviews, crowdsourced peer reviews, they could be curated via upvotes and downvotes. Maybe if those upvotes and downvotes had like an expertise score, where like if you're a PhD in the field, like your opinion of the peer review, you know, would have more influence than somebody who's like outside. Yeah, curious what you think.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that would be better. I mean, weighted scoring methods, but no differentiation in the way that it's presented.
It's an interesting perspective. I totally see where you're coming from, and I could see it like resonating with a lot of people. Edwin?
I was wondering, do you guys think there would be demand for study design where somebody before you actually like do the experiments can lay out what experiments you're thinking about and have other people comment on them to make sure that your methods, it may not always make sense to do critique of the method after the study has already been carried on, like having a way to get help before that. I don't know if you guys think there would be a lot of demand for that, but I could see that being pretty useful to a lot of people.
Yeah, like pre-registrations, I think would be super cool. There's like this idea of registered reports too, where basically people will share pre-registrations, which is basically what you're describing, like a plan for the research. And then that pre-registration goes through peer review and it can be accepted. So that way the authors have a guaranteed publication. Like no matter what their results show, they're able to just carry out the experiments, not have to worry about it being cool or not. And then like it's guaranteed to be published. So that could be pretty cool. Like if we, did peer like a registered report style publication model through hubs. I mean, I love that idea personally. I think it's like the best thing that we could do for science. But
so what are the downsides?
People don't use them very often. This is like kind of like a new age like thing. I think like eLife just did their first one. Like they did the registered report like 2 years ago, and the results were just published. It's like a trendy open science thing, but not that many scientists do it. So
why not?
Because it's like at the end of the day, it's more challenging. Like you're kind of like laying out like a path that you have to hold to, and like sometimes like you can do research, find something interesting, bend the direction, like 30 degrees into something that's more interesting.
Well, why don't you design something that gives them that leeway then? That's possible, right?
Yeah, I think we could definitely do something here with the pre-registration specifically. I think that we could do something where people are earning money. Like basically they're taking risk, but they're being compensated for it financially, for doing so. Yeah, it's an interesting topic though. I think peer review on methods is a super cool thing.
Yeah, it just seems like it would be like the immediate sort of value add of having the decentralized peer review is just like you have more people looking at it, so it's better. And that's like improving something that's like already a thing, but there's still like a lot of unknowns, and the entire process isn't necessarily being optimized. So yeah, I don't know. It's worth thinking about. So.
Yeah, Kobe, it seems like people are like really excited for the like pre-publication is like where the actual cool stuff can be done.
Yeah.
On the pre-registration one, you could even like have people kind of like stake their coins on this pre-registration, be like, okay, I want to have like some like skinning in the game here, and kind of like I like this, I want to see how it goes, and users can even like tip this pre-registration. I would tip that way more than an actual paper, because that means I believe in like what you're doing, and I want to see how far you go with this.
It also lowers the bar to expertise for participating in a project.
Exactly. Like if you like the topic or like what someone is willing to do for like a specific research idea, you can just like tip him and be like, yeah, just want to see the results.
So this is the funding feature that we should do eventually, because you could like share at the very beginning of a project a pre-registration fast grants, the way that they did their applications.
Yeah.
It was like 5 paragraphs. It was basically pre-registration. And so like we could do funding via these pre-registrations that have peer review, and like experts upvote them. Funders are like, oh, this is the one that all the, quantum chemists, think is the coolest right now. So yeah, I think there's a lot of directing funding through pre-registrations, I think is a really, really interesting idea. because we make the world a better place while also getting scientists more money. It's pretty cool.
And probably the scientists who need the money the most.
And are willing to like lay their plans out and see if they
Yeah.
stick to them. You know, it's like they deserve the money. Nathan?
Am I right in thinking that one of the barriers to uploading pre-registrations at the moment is that this fear of letting rival labs know exactly what your experiments are, what your plans are, so that they can either be copied or got ahead of or improved on and then, you know, rivaled with? I mean, I guess there's a lot of similarities to building a new startup, right? There's this whole movement of like open building, letting everyone know what's going on, but then you've always got these competitors. I'm personally optimistic. I think you're right that you know, there's a lot of advantages to doing it openly. You get people interested on board from the more funding. I think it could work. I just think that's what's going on at the moment. I think it's a very you know, protective, sort of suspicious environment in terms of research and grants and things like that.
Yeah, totally. There would have to be money associated with it somehow. Like Open Science Framework, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. They did something where if you shared pre-registration and then ended up like posting data that was like clearly made using the same methods, then you got $1,000. And so they got like a bunch of people to submit these pre-registrations, but like not that many actually tied them up at the end. But yeah, I think you're right, Nathan, where it's like the world's different. Like raising money is different. Like it makes no sense to share your data when the only money is coming from the state funding agency. But now if money could come from like, you know, everybody in this room who wants to throw $5 towards like a cool genetic engineering study or something, like then all of a sudden it makes a lot more sense to be out in the open talking about what you're doing, you know, like recruiting users, for lack of a better term, funders. Like it's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it like a podcast too, like Patreon. You know what I mean? Like they're putting out content for free. You know, it's interesting to follow along with this content, and then they monetize their most dedicated followers, right? So maybe you're giving money to this pre-registration, and that actually lets you like sit in with the scientist once a month and like ask questions about the latest data. Like maybe you get their ELN or something like that. Lots of different things.
Okay, so you're gonna stand green too.
Yeah.
You just have to pay.
Yeah, very quickly, I just put in a point that this could be also a useful utility for NFTs as well. You know, if you put up a pre-registration, you could then issue NFTs for people who are on board, and that would also give it the identity tied with you as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so we'll have to talk about this at a later community call, but we're going to decide like after peer review what feature comes next. And one of the things we're thinking about is like NFTs versus like a couple other things, like how can we start generating some revenue / like continue to like build towards this sort of like journal-ish product. Yeah, so we can do another call later on and kind of talk about like what direction we're thinking about heading in. Malik?
Yeah, I like this idea about the pre-registration, but I wanted to circle back to you know, the earlier comment by Satwik about, you know, not differentiating between like experts and non-experts. But you know, I believe that there, like, if we are going to make this like a professional grade, you know, review, that at some point there needs to be some gatekeeping, and including like the conflicts of interest on this or not, because you know, as open internet is, like you can have like a, I don't know, a medication from one pharmaceutical company being bashed by somebody else, like a medical science liaison for other, and posting it as peer review. You know, so there are a couple of those things that you know, can cause issues, and either the editor has to have some control, or I believe that the person who is doing the review has to pass through some sort of prerequisites to say that, hey, they can do peer review, or they can still always post a comment, you know, about the paper and critique it in their way. But I think if you are calling it a peer review, then, you know, I believe there has to be some criteria. And just my 2 cents. Yeah.
And it may be a good strategy even just for adoption purposes, because I think the majority of academics would probably feel similar. I guess that's why I do think there's something to what you're saying, Satvik, though, where you empowered the average person to like be able to stand next to scientists. The way my gut always feels about this is the Rotten Tomatoes expert versus crowdsourced score, because there's always context on like if it's like a 60 expert but like a 95 crowdsourced. Like I know more about that movie, like so I think there's something we could do there that's pretty cool. Yeah, so I guess we've spent most of the time talking about peer review. Does anybody have any like final thoughts here on peer review? This has also been amazing feedback. So thanks everybody so much. These ideas are like super good. We were talking about them a lot kind of earlier today. Yeah, so any last thoughts on peer review before we move on? Jennifer?
Oh, I think I was just chime in that I think I'm in agreement on the side of still having a different identifier for expert reviews versus non-expert reviews. I think that's helpful for everyone. I think someone who's themselves not an expert wouldn't really know how to differentiate the two. And there's people who can sound very confident about something they don't actually know anything about. And so I think for actually just the lay user to be able to differentiate it, not depending on their own knowledge, but those identifiers is important as well.
Yeah, I feel similarly personally. And maybe there's like something where like the differentiation is like in a pre-publication peer review versus post-publication, because pre-publication in theory would have to be experts in the field, relevant field, and then post-publication could be anyone, once we get there eventually. Yeah, it's a tough thing, but I think I'm with you, Jennifer. I feel kind of similarly where I want an expert to tell me, if what I'm looking at is legit. Nathan?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a general comment on this, which is that I do think it's really important that we get this nailed down, because I'm just thinking of past instances where on sites like Twitter and things like that, you've had very contentious topics at the time where proper peer-reviewed research has been at its most important. For example, in the early stages of COVID-19, when people were propagating hydroxychloroquine, when they were propagating ivermectin, and you had a small number of experts saying, actually, there's no data to support this. There's no randomized control trial data to support this. And yet there was just this wave of people who could be experts, and then all these supporters who are so fixed in their belief that it is real, that in any crowdsourced metric, I suspect it would have looked really good. So if you had a scenario where any lay member could post a score versus the few experts on the topic posting a counter narrative, it would actually look very, very bad compared to what the reality was. And so I think this is something we've got to get nailed down, because just by the nature of this site, it promotes interesting papers, the most relevant papers, and then the next time a situation like this arises, I can imagine that the top of the hub will be one of these papers. Yeah, that'll just be my comment on it.
And kind of even building off it, I read something that like even within the expert pool on Twitter, like it's not even the experts, it's like professors who like are good at social media, so like it's when it's like we're having epidemiology conversation, it's not like the absolute top of the field is there in that conversation on Twitter. It's like some professor who's probably clearly a expert in epidemiology, but the Twitter following. So yeah, I think like taking into account real life expertise and somehow baking this in, so that way like the people who are at the top of their field currently, like you can see that context in the reviews that they share, and the wait until like whatever peer review score, I think is probably important, at least to get started. Jennifer?
One of the things I'm wondering about is how that is measured, though. What is considered an expert? Because I come from like intellectual property, patent law, and we usually use the term like one of ordinary skill in the art when we're talking about how to determine whether something's kind of an obvious invention or something that's novel. But that seems like a very different level than saying expert, right? An ordinary skill in the art, someone who could be working in the field, but an expert, someone who must have I don't know what studied it for, you know, all the way to this level of PhD. And so I'm curious how that is, how we would determine that, how, you know, and whether within that, between layperson to expert, whether there's levels there. And, but, you know, obviously someone who's kind of somewhere, you know, in the middle, maybe with a bachelor degree or has worked in the field 10 years versus someone who's worked, you know, 20 years, you know, is there going to be differentiators of that, or, you know, anything like that?
Yeah, so we should actually do a call on that this week, and I'll write that down for anybody who wants to jump in. But part of this next sprint, we're going to take a look at reputation. And so, like, in theory, reputation should capture this in a way where, like a, you know, total layperson has a different initial reputation score than like a undergrad in biology who has a different reputation score than a master's student who's different than a postdoc who's different than somebody with a bajillion publications, and trying to tier things out, like reputation wise on the site. And I think this could, you know, be something that we use in a lot of different features, but like even weighting the peer review scores. So if you're like, if we'd have to have like pretty specific hubs too, but like if you have you know, 1 million publications in biochemistry, then your opinion's worth more than me, you know, because I just have like a master's degree, you know, in biochemistry. But my opinion's worth more than Kobe's, who like did his work in computer science in you know, biochemistry paper. I think that would be pretty cool and make a big difference. Nathan?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick nod to Satvik's initial point, though, because I think it's good that we keep the, you know, vision of ResearchHub, in at least the original vision of, you know, decentralized science in mind, which is that I think there is this sort of sense and this suspicion from lay members of the public that these publications in the top journals are kind of pronouncements from this non-transparent class of self-appointed elites. And, you know, maybe, you know, someone coming at it from a different field looks at it and goes, this looks like bullshit to me, you know, and I can show you why. And actually maybe that person should have the ability to have their voice put up, if what they've put out merits it and is determined by the community to merit it, have that voice be put up on, you know, an equal playing field to an expert if the situation dictates it.
And if we're looking at the history of science, like the experts have been wrong a lot, you know, so like I think it's good to be conscious of that. And I wonder, like, this is probably pretty complicated, you know, for the stage that we're at, but like I always think of like one thing Balaji always talks about on his podcast was how he was way against shaking hands before anybody else was, and people were like, oh, you're not paying attention to the science, like this is, you know, like hocus pocus, whatever. But then he ended up being right. So like if there's some kind of like way we could measure like an early detractor from the experts, you know, that ended up being like right over time, and then give them expertise based on that, like make it so you can become an expert, you know, if you're smarter than the experts when it comes to like actually interpreting things.
So can I say something?
Yeah.
So how do you guys calculate reputation right now? Because I think like the fact that that's a little bit of a black box, there's a lot of value that could be captured through building reputations on the site if it's made more explicit. Specifically with NFTs, I think that could be potentially like a way that people could specialize on ResearchHub. That could be pretty good. So
yeah, it's a great question, and like to be totally honest, it's probably not worth getting into right now because we're gonna retool the whole thing. So like I think it's like worth doing a call maybe later this week, and we'll have Pat join, Pat Liu, who's gonna be the one working on this, and we can like talk about like the best way to do a reputation score, because I do think that's something that's missing now. And you're right, like it is black box, like I don't even know how it works, and like if you look at our leaderboard, like it's kind of all over the place. So yeah, definitely having the reputation like reflect real life science expertise, I think is important, just to you make the website look legitimate. I guess, Jeff, so we're at like an hour now. Do you want to like quickly do some of these other topics, like if there's important stuff?
Yeah, I think the last topic, which was like kind of how the RSC rewarding correlates to reputation, sounds like it would fit in that meeting that you're talking about, Patrick, maybe later in the week. So maybe we can discuss that then. And then 2 and 3 are kind of coupled together. And maybe Ricardo can elaborate on them, but they are in relation to kind of some of the posts that have been popping up on ResearchHub with regards to like suggestions on like how to change the platform or feature requests, and maybe how we can clarify to users where to direct those posts versus like science and academia only related posts on the platform, and then kind of bringing to light kind of the guidelines in a more visible way.
Okay, so if I repeat that back, in theory, the posts that are in like the ResearchHub hub, like making feature suggestions and stuff like that, like we should try and keep those like off, like on GitHub, basically. Is that what you're thinking, Jeff? Just to keep the homepage looking nice?
Discord also.
Discord.
Yeah, feature requests on Discord. We have a channel for it, but or on GitHub or something like that, because it seems like if we want to like, because like you look at the trending, and the trending is like ResearchHub needs to be more understanding of the hubs, and like it
Yeah.
kind of detracts from like really quality science that should probably be more on the trending feed.
Kobe, can we block the ResearchHub hub from being on trending?
Yeah, I can easily remove it from the trending on the homepage. Yeah, I'm trying to think about. Yeah, I can do that. The question is like, how would people be made aware of such a thing? Maybe we can have people post on ResearchHub, like Hub, and then in addition post on Discord, letting people know that they posted. Anyone has any thoughts about that?
I think like Jeffrey, I think he made a comment like basically explaining in very simple terms that we have a channel dedicated to like feature requests and discussion on features. So that could be discussed in Discord. Because apart from having the possibility to actually brought up all the suggestions, these posts are actually those are most discussed. Because there's a lot of people that want to just chime in and put their comments. They're always at the top. And as Jeff said, it doesn't look great if we want to promote science. So just if you want to suggest something, we have Slack. We had Slack. So we have Discord, and all the conversation on this kind of thing should be on Discord. It's also easier to actually interact with other people.
I guess the one thought I have though, and Kobe, let me know if you feel the same, but that peer review, like we got like a lot of people who chimed in, and I think it's just because of where it is on the forum that like more people are willing to like, because they're already there, like they'll share their comment rather than like going to GitHub or like going to Discord. So I'm wondering maybe if there's something like we remove it from the homepage, but every time we release a new feature or want people's feedback, we give people a notification that then pushes them to that discussion or something.
Yes, and in addition, like another point to be made here is if we move away, just like we did from Slack to Discord, and then one day we're like, oh, Discord is not good, let's move to something else. These conversations will be lost, and it's very good, I think, in my opinion, to keep them on the platform where they're going to be saved for forever. And I think it's very nice that people can earn RSC on providing like meaningful feedback.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. Like in my head, like I think it was a great. I guess maybe like more for like the team to get feedback from like a lot of the users. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like the post that you made, Kobe. I think like when you have a bunch of people that are just gonna start, maybe like if it's possible to like have it only be like kind of like the ResearchHub team can make those posts, but maybe not everybody else, and everybody else can filter that through like the Discord feature request channel.
That makes a lot of sense, because then it starts to look like a subreddit more than like us like getting feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good idea. Yeah. I actually like that. Maybe only specific people can post in the and
maybe just the team.
It makes sense.
Even just the team, because otherwise, like anyone can just like come up and be like, "Hey, I want this," or "I think this doesn't go as expected," and so on. So I think it makes sense if you have the team just posting on that.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good suggestion.
And regarding the second thing is, some people reached out to me in DM, kind of like asking why they were banned or like what happened with the accounts. And I think we should probably do a better job in making clear what are the sort of like posting guidelines. I know we have them, but they're like kind of buried in at the bottom. You have to click help, and then you open the Notion page, and you see all the posting guidelines. We just have to make sure that comments like cool, interesting, and so on could be considered as bots because they're rather simple and want to encourage more thought through conversation. So just making that more visible for people that at least we made it visible and you knew that you should have commented in a different way. And also that gives more emphasis on our upvote feature. So that an upvote means I support this opinion or I think this is great and so on. And for any other thing you can comment.
I think somebody mentioned this last week, but like on our science, whenever you post something, they have the auto moderator bot that's like, hey, this is our science. Just so you know, if you don't say anything scientific, we're gonna ban the shit out of it. So I think that makes sense, right? Like where we could have every single paper immediately ResearchHub mod team says like, hey, this is like science. We're talking about science. Here's our community rules or whatever. Like, here's what we have expectations of you. If you don't do it, it's going to be deleted. And then, with that being said, we're also working on this sprint, basically a bunch of tools to help editors maintain quality within their hubs. So basically, like an editor dashboard that'll kind of help us be able to I think maybe even give people specific reasons why their content's being removed in order to help push them towards a better direction. Ricardo, is that do you think that would help do the trick? Cool. Kobe, do you have any thoughts on the content quality stuff? Well, we got everybody.
Yeah, I guess, in addition to what you just said, Joyce, one more thing we're working on is the ability to flag content. So as you mentioned, Ricardo, we need to make sure people are understanding why their content is being banned. And one way to do it is by flagging content. And that flag content will end up in the moderator dashboard. And in addition to that, not just flag content, but any content will actually go through the moderator dashboard for them to review, and they'll be able to reject it and maybe even give a reason why they rejected it or something like that. So when it comes to getting reasons why content would be rejected, they would be made aware, because we really want to raise the bar of quality. So that's what we're thinking about. And by the end of the sprint, we should have the tools in place to do it.
Yeah, the idea is that we don't want to punish people. We just want to keep a specific, standard for the content we got on the platform. So if people ask,
Right.
I mean, I'm just sorry to say that, your comment was considered coming from a bot. I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but there's a reason behind it. So we want to make sure that you also understand why that happened. And, we hope that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and exactly that. Once your comment get rejected for any reason, you will know exactly why. And another thing you made me think about, Ricardo, is I'm thinking even when someone goes to post a comment, the posting guidelines is really hidden in another page. I'm thinking of as soon as you put your cursor and focus on the comment box, we might be able to pop open a thing on the side saying by the way, these are our guidelines. Please follow them. 1, 2, 3. Just so you're super clear about what we want you to write and what we don't want you to write. But just as an idea,
if that's not too difficult to make on an engineering standpoint, that would be awesome. Having I don't know, 2 or 3 sentences, pretty simple. To just hey, just reminder, you should not post this and that, or comment like this. Yeah, I love that.
For sure.
So just before I forget too, for the reputation call, is the same time good for everybody typically if we do it on Thursday or something like that? Just for convenience sake, scheduling.
Yeah, good for me.
Thursday, works for me as well.
Cool. Safik?
Yeah, so I had 2 points about this. About the previous point, wherein we were discussing RH versus Discord. I don't think that we should limit the ability of normal users to post on the ResearchHub hub, but we should definitely limit the ability of those posts to show up on trending, right? Because as the site grows, there will be a lot of people who just use the site and who are not interested or maybe not proficient in Discord or Slack. So, for example, I've tried sending our Discord and Slack to a law professor, but he was interested in sort of browsing through the site, but not interested in joining this alien community, right? So there would be people who are interested in just the site, and then they might have ideas for the site itself, right? And they should be sort of given a place to voice that, right? Uh, and then maybe if it gets like 1,000 of votes, then it should show up on trending because it's serious, right? Other than that, there should be a provision for sort of posts that are made by the core researcher team, right? Such as Kobe's post about peer reviews, right? And that could show up the way Reddit posts show up. So, for example, while r/place was going on, I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was this separate box that didn't look like a post. It just said that, hey, this is going on, you could go there. So maybe a separate box with a slightly different background color could say, hey, we are building out peer reviews, and we would love to hear what you have to say about it. So that could be a way of going about
it. I think it's a great perspective, and like the one thing that I really liked about Kobe's post is like even for the passive consumers, it's like, oh, like this is a bunch of real people who are actually trying to solve a problem. Like I feel like it like humanizes the website a little bit, and so I agree with you in that like keeping an outlet for people to get in touch with that human aspect is probably pretty important, and like casting that net as wide as we can is a good thing. So yeah, we'll have to think about the ResearchHub hub a little bit more. I think the problem of these posts that are kind of low quality showing up on the homepage is a real one, and we need to solve that. But then I also think like, yeah, just the conversations have been really good, and so like making sure that we don't lose that is also important. And yeah, having people like actually be able to feel like they can be heard is cool. Cool.
Also, so one more thing that I had to say. So the way that we have a tweets channel on Discord that automatically generates the links to all of the tweets that we put out, maybe we could have that integrated in the feature request, wherein if anyone posts on ResearchHub hub, it could directly post on the feature request channel, and then the community would see it there and interact with it there.
I think we could do something like that eventually, like build a Discord bot. It may be a little early right now, but I think getting there eventually would make sense. Cool.
I think Malik raised his hand.
Sorry, that was by mistake. I just wrote in the comment. I like what Satwik was going with. I just thought maybe create a new hub for that or something where people can have an outlet. Just a thought. Nothing. Yeah, thanks.
Did we get to pretty much all of the topics, do you think?
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered everything. I wanted to, I guess before like signing off, just wanted to remind the ResearchHub team also that like a lot of like the bug reports and stuff, people have been posting them in the Discord instead of Slack. So there's like a few things floating around in there. But other than that, I think that kind of concludes everything. So like if anyone has any other things to mention, we can tack it on to the next week's community call, unless Bianca is coming for the next week one. So in that case, we'll push it for a couple weeks. But if nobody has anything else to add, then we can probably just conclude the meeting.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Thank you.